Hi guys, so I am here today to do a reading for the Sorcerer's Apprentice, The Ruins of Gorlan. It will be chapter 20. So, yeah. Okay, let's do this thing. The other hunters crowded around the young knight who had made the kill, congratulating him and patting him his back. Baron Erold started across toward him, but paused beside Tug, looking up to Will as he spoke. "You won't see another that size in a long time, Will," he said, gruffly. "Pity he didn't come our way. I would have liked a trophy like that for myself," he continued, on his way toward Sir Rodney, who was already with the group of warriors around the dead broad. Consequently, Will found himself, for the first time in some weeks, face to face with Horace. There was an awkward pause, but neither boy willing to make the first move. Horace, excited by the events of the morning, his heart still pounding with a thrill of fear, he felt that the boar first appeared wanted to share the moment with Will. In the light of what they had just seen, their childish squabble seemed unimportant, and now he felt badly about his behavior on that day 6 weeks ago. But he couldn't find the words to express his feelings, and he saw no encouragement to do so in Will's set features. So with a slight shrug, he started to step past Tug to go and congratulate the young hunter. As he did so, the pony stiffened and pricked his ears, giving a warning neigh. Will looked back at the thicket, and his blood seemed to freeze in his veins. There, standing just outside the shelter of the bushes, was another boar, even larger than the one which now lay dead in the snow. "Okay, nah. Look out," he cried, as the huge beast lashed at the earth with its tusks. It was a bad situation. The line of hunters had broken up, most of them having moved over to marvel at the size of the dead boar and to praise its killer. Only Will and Horace remained in the path of the second boar. Mainly Will realized, because Horace had hesitated for a few vital seconds. Horace spun around at Will's shout. He looked at Will, then swung to look at the new danger. The boar lowered his head, tore at the ground again, and charged. It all happened with a terrifying speed. One moment the huge animal was ripping the ground with its tusks. The next it was hurtling toward them. Placing himself between Will and the boar, Horace turned without hesitation to face it, setting his spear at Sir Rodney and the Baron had showed him. But as he did so, his foot slipped on the icy patch of snow, and he sprawled helplessly onto his side, the long spear falling from his grip. There was not a second to lose. Horace lay helpless before those murderous tusks. Will kicked his feet clear of the stirrups and dropped to the ground, sighting and drawing back at the bowstring. Even as he did so, he knew his small bow would have no chance of stopping the boar's maddened rush. All he could hope to do was to distract the maddened animal and turn it away from the helpless boy on the ground. He fired and instantly ran to one side, away from the fallen apprentice. He yelled at the top of his lungs and fired again. The arrow stuck out of the boar's thick hide with needles in a pincushion. They did not so serious. It wasn't. They did not. Okay, this is. They did no serious harm, but the pain of them burned through the animal like a hot knife. They put arrows in it. I don't understand. Its red, angry eyes fastened on that small, capering figure. And one side, and furiously it swung after Will. Oh, fun. There was no time to fire again. Horace was safe for the moment. Now Will himself was in danger. He sprinted for the shelter of a tree and ducked behind it, just in time. The boar's enraged, charged carrier it straight into the trunk of the tree. Its huge body crashed against the trunk, shaking it to its roots, sending showers of snow cascading out of its upper branches. Amazingly, the boar seemed unaffected by the crash. It backed up a few paces and changed as Will and charged at Will again. It really likes Will. The boy darted around the tree trunk again, narrowly avoiding the slashing tusks as the boar thundered by, screaming in fury. The huge animal spun in its tracks, skidding in the snow, and came at him again. There's all these people. Let's attack the main character. That's a good idea. I'm trying to find where I was. This time it came slowly, giving Will no chance to dart to one side at the last moment. The boar came at a trot, fury in its red eyes, tusks slashing from the side to side, its hot breath steaming in the freezing winter air. Behind him, Will could hear the shouts of the hunters, but he knew they'd arrive too late to help him. He knocked another arrow, knowing that he had no chance of hitting a vital spot if the pig came at him head on. Then there was muffled hooves on the snow, and a small, shaggy shape was driving toward the furious monster. No tug, Will screamed, in an agony of fear for his horse. But the pony charged at the huge boar, spinning in its tracks and lashing out with his rear hooves as he came within range. Tug's rear hooves caught the pig in the ribs again, and with all the force of the pony's upper legs behind it, sent the boar rolling sideways in the snow. The boar was up in an instant, even more furious than before. The pony had caught him off balance, but the kick had done it no serious damage. Now the boar slashed and cut at Tug as the little pony neighed in fear and danced sideways out of the reach of those razor-sharp tusks. Tug, get clear! Will screamed again. His heart was in his throat. It was the tusks caught the vulnerable tendons in the horse's lower legs. Tug would be crippled. Okay, for life. That's a word. He couldn't stand by and watch his horse put himself in such peril for this master. He drew and fired again, and dragging the Long Ranger knife from his belt, charged across the snow at a huge, furious beast. The third arrow struck the pig in the side. Again, he had missed the vulnerable spot and only wounded the monster. He yelled at it as he ran, screaming for Tug to get clear. The boar saw him coming, reorganized the small figure, and had first driven it to such fury. Its red, hate-filled eyes fastened upon him, and its head lowered for a final killing charge. Will saw the muscles in the massive hindquarters. He was too far from cover to run. He'd have to face the charge here in the open. He dropped on one knee and hopelessly held out the keen-bladed range knife in front of him. As the boar charged, dimly he heard his hoarse cry as the apprentice warrior charged forward to help him. His spear was at the ready. This is cool. Then a deep whistling his cut across the sound of the boar's hooves, followed by a solid, meaty smack. The boar reared up in mid-stride, twisting in sudden agony, and fell dead as the stone in the snow. Halt's heavy shafted long arrow was almost buried in its side, driven there by the full power of the ranger's mighty longbow. He'd struck the charging monster right behind the left shoulder, driving the head of the arrow in through the pig's massive heart. A perfect shot. Halt reined in a blurred in the shower of snow and hurled him to the ground, threw his arms around the shaking boy. Will overcame with relief, buried his face through the rough cloth of the ranger cloak. He didn't want anyone to see the tears of relief that were streaming down his face. Gently, Holt took the knife from Will's hand. "What on earth are you hoping to do with this?" he asked. Will simply shook his head. He couldn't speak. He felt Tug's soft muzzle butting gently against him and looking up into the big, intelligent eyes. Then it was all noise and confusion as the hunters gathered around, marveling at the size for a second boar and slapping Will on the back for his courage. He stood among them, a small figure, ashamed still of the tears that slid down his cheeks, no matter how hard he tried to stop them. He felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to find he was looking into Horace's eyes. The apprentice warrior was shaking his head slowly in admiration and disbelief. "You saved my life," he said. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." Will tried to shrug the other boy's thanks aside, but Horace pressed on. He remembered all the times in the past that he'd teased Will when he'd bullied him. Now, acting instinctively, the smaller boy had saved him from those murderous, slashing tusks. It said something for Horace's growing maturity that he'd forgotten about his instinctive action when he'd placed himself between the charging boar and the apprentice ranger. But why, Will? After all, He couldn't bring himself to finish the statement, but Will somehow knew what was in his mind. "Horace, you may have fought in the past," she said, "but I don't hate you. I never hated you." Horace nodded once, a look of understanding coming over his face. Then he seemed to come to a decision. "I owe you my life, Will," he said in a determined voice. "I'll never forget that debt." If ever you need a friend, if you ever need help, you can call on me." The two boys faced each other for a moment, and Horace thrust his hand, and Will took it. The circle of knights around them was silent, witnessing but not wanting to interrupt this important moment for the two boys. The Baron Arnold stepped forward and put his arm around them both. "Well said, both of you," he said, heartily, and the knight thrust their assent. The Baron grinned delightedly. It had been a perfect morning, all told. A bit of excitement, 2 huge boars killed, and now 2 of his wards forging a sort of special bond that only came from shared danger. "You've got 2 fine young men here," he said, as the group at large, and again there was the hearty chorus of assent. "Halt, Rodney, you can both be proud of your apprentices." "Indeed we are, my lord," Sir Rodney replied. He nodded approvingly at Horace. He'd seen the way the boy had turned without hesitation to face the charge. He approved of Horace's open offer of friendship to Will. He remembered all too well seeing them fighting on Harvest Day. It seemed such childish squabbles were behind them now, and he felt a deep satisfaction that he had chosen Horace for battle school. Holt, for his part, said nothing, but when Will turned to look at his mentor, the grizzled ranger met his eye and simply nodded, and that, Will knew, was an equivalent to 3 hearty cheers for Holt.